Greetings! Welcome to the Devlog for hot dogs, horseshoes, and hand grenades. We're going to start off as always with a quick sound check. Make sure your speakers aren't up too high. Wonderful. Whoa, what do we got here? That's not the 1911 we have been using in the past. That's right, it's the end of the year, pretty much, and I decided a little bit of a change was needed after a vacation that I just got back from. I firing a bunch of different sorts of things. I was like, you know what? With all of the other sort of handgun options, I really wish I had a 1911 with a little more capacity on it. It was maybe just a little more, operator-tastic. So here we go. Let's take a look at this sucker. This will show up eventually in the item spawner as a 1911 tactical. It's got a built-in red dot that's permanently affixed to the slide. These can't be removed. These types of attachments can't be removable because they exist on a moving piece, namely the slide. And to actually make them the sort of full complexity removable object, I ran into performance issues and zeroing issues, actually. So it has to be sort of perma-welded in, and we've got this extended 11-round magazine for it. And you'll notice the new sound for it as well from Patrick. Let's take a few more shots with this. Beautiful. So, and last to go with it, we've got a suppressor that is visually and thematically linked to it. Let's see if we can actually screw it on. There we go. Having a bit of a slow day. There we go. Beautiful. Excellent. So that is the new 1911. Don't worry, the old ones didn't go away. This is just a new addition to the family. So what else are we going to do today? Well, we've got Meatmas coming up in a couple days, so I'm going to go ahead and jump out of VR and actually show you folks a bunch of footage from where I went shooting this past week while I was in Vegas again, and talk about some of the things that sort of inspired me in that process for things that I plan to work on in H3 in the coming year. So let's go ahead and do that.
Yo, so we're out of VR. Before we jump on over to the actual shooting footage, I wanted to remind you all that this is the last week that you all can enter the Meatmas Holiday Ornament Contest on the subreddit. Remember, entries close basically at midnight on Christmas Eve. So if you still want to enter something, you've still got a couple days to come up with something zany, fun, and festive. So enter. There's cool prizes. Moving on from there, apologies if I am at all a little disheveled or cough through this, but me being me, I finally decided to take a vacation this past week and proceed to get sick on like day 2 of it. So I'm still sick, as you could probably hear in my voice. Some sort of throat infection thing, which has been not fun. So that's one of the other reasons why I decided to do something sort of low-key for today. So I got to, while in Vegas though, I still had an enjoyable time, and I got to go firing twice. The first one was actually at somewhere I hadn't been before. If you're a local of Las Vegas, you know of this place. It's up at the Clark County firing range, which is north of the city, and I went there by way of a little shop called Guns World Vegas, which is up in North Vegas. Fun little shop, owned by an older couple who lived in Guam at one point and came over here to do their gun tourism thing here. I was attracted to it because they had a list of what they had to shoot online. No machine guns, nothing fully automatic, but they had some more unusual numbers, especially in the sort of handgun category. And I just wanted to shoot outdoors for a bit, was able to take my time a little more. I pulled out my shopping list, I grabbed a set of things that I wanted to shoot, and we headed out to the range. The first thing that I got to fire was this beautiful little Colt hammerless pocket pistol, which I had never fired at anything that small before, and small and old at the same time. So it's a 25 ACP. It has a grip safety in it, which means you really have to press the sort of meat of your hand into the back of the grip, which is a little challenging because the grip is so short that you're going to get your middle finger and your trigger finger onto it and nothing else. So it took a little moment for me to actually find a firing posture for it that didn't involve me prematurely putting my finger on the trigger. It was a little nerve-wracking at first. Truthfully, I don't know how anyone is expected to be able to fire that with one hand safely. But it was beautiful, really smooth, crisp recoil impulse, really controllable, and no failures to feed or anything like that. It chewed through the ammo beautifully. And I wanted the other reason, sort of research wise, that I wanted to fire this is that in 2018, one of the systems that I really want to go back and work on a bunch is recoil, especially as it relates to differences in recoil between handguns and rifles. At the moment, it's a unified system, and the more I shoot, the more I find how wrong that feels, and how I have to do something a little more bespoke for each. So I wanted a sort of calibrated minimum that wasn't a 22, because a 22 is like, the gun doesn't even move when you fire it. So I wanted something that was low caliber in a really lightweight frame so that I could feel how that felt. But absolutely a surprise delight to shoot. I think I want to pick one up at some point. So yeah, next up I got to fire something that I had wanted to fire for a long time. Ever since Metal Gear Solid, of course, which is the MK23 SOCOM, which is huge. However, if you've never held one or never fired one, however big you think it is, it's larger. It's quite preposterous, which makes sense considering I think the term that was that was used in the design of it was either as an offensive pistol or an assault pistol. They used one of those two terms, and you can believe it. It's heavy framed enough and sort of durable and bulky that I can totally imagine with practice being able to fire it quite rapidly. And it's got a pretty high capacity as well. So that was a blast. This was a sort of like on the upper end of sort of controllable handgun recoil. And what I was trying to pay attention to while I was shooting is that initial moment right after firing where where the elastic nature of your hand, your muscles, your wrists is completely overcome by the impulse. It's you'll notice in looking at video of these, or if you shoot yourself, handguns, especially higher caliber ones, jerk back way further momentarily than they do in H3. And that's been something that I've been trying to balance and get a little more of that behavior in without making it impossible to hit things or feel as though the game is just interfering with your ability to aim. So that's one of my big active research projects, and it's why I fired this combination of handguns and was trying to pay so close attention to it. Let's see, what else? What was next? Oh, so I decided to fire a Tavor, in part because it was the last bullpup, last major bullpup that I had not fired. And I have to say that if I had fired it in the same batch as all of the others, I might have had a slightly different opinion overall about bullpups as a class. And much as it pains me to say, because I think it's still a pretty hideous looking rifle, it has the best firing experience of any bullpup. For me, it even edges out the AUG, because the AUG's trigger is still garbage. It may have a beautiful form factor, the fixed optic is nice, it feels cool because we all played a lot of Counter-Strike, but the Tavor is, I would call it the only bullpup with a serviceable trigger. It was a great trigger, actually. The mag latch being right behind your hand is still a little nerve-wracking. I can totally imagine bringing the rifle down onto a sling and going like this and just blooping the magazine out, especially if you're using heavy metal mags. But other than that, it was surprising. What a quality experience. Next time I get a chance, I want to fire the smaller one, the the X95, just to see what that's like, because I hear that's like another generation or a half generation step beyond the version that I fired. But yeah, in general, bullpup I'm still like, no, but this one is maybe. So let's see. Oh yes, and then next, I had to, in part because once again I was comparing things for one-handed firing experience. I fired a Draco chopped down AK pistol, which feels ridiculous. You pick the thing up, and because it doesn't have a stock, but it's also so heavy, there's this immediate feeling of not knowing exactly how to hold it to be able to fire. I certainly did not feel comfortable having it up here, lest it slam me in the face. But was super fun. Just as I got it almost as a goof. And as you can see here, decided to try firing one round out of it one-handed, which was mostly difficult just due to the weight of the thing and my programmer noodle arms. But it was a fun experience nonetheless. And then last off, you've seen me fire this before, but I had to fire a bit of a bar. I will never turn down an opportunity to fire a bar. I will own one or more of these at some point. It might be my favorite thing of the era. I hadn't fired it actually semi-auto before. I'd only fired it with a fun switch before, which means it's very, very different experience. So I decided to do that here, and quite enjoyable. And then I did a second trip to Battlefield Vegas, with the goal primarily being for me filling in a number of rifles and SMGs that I had just not gotten any time on with firing them fully automatic. Just because I once again was trying to compare the nuance of felt recoil between a number of things, just ensure that I had the right sort of sounds or magazine insertion or sort of ejection feel to them. The first I fired a couple SMGs. I did an MP5A2 finally. I had done the MP5K before, but just not the classic A2. It's perfect, obviously, and just so smooth. I ran the UMP45 for a bit, which I guess I had some misconceptions about this firearm. Perhaps because the marketing for the Chris Vector has been so effective. But when I stepped up to this, I expected even the 2-round burst on this to have significant muzzle rise. And while it's still a peppy gun, don't get me wrong, it was way more controllable than I was expecting. Its magazine is also just so you could beat someone to death with the magazine for the UMP. So, but was really enjoyable. Super gassy gun though, but that might also just been the ammo I was shooting. Let's see what else. Oh, finally got to fire a SIG 552, which was just fantastic. I love me a 552. There's actually a few things about it that I was firing that I was like, ooh, I don't have the sound quite right for this. The handling noise needs a little work in terms of the version of it in H3. But it was more compact than I was expecting, and I love I love that Rockin' style mag on it, and yeah, it was an ear-to-ear smile getting to fire. I fired a G36K, which felt, exact opposite. Not in terms of bad, but just big, bulky, kind of plasticky. I can't say I'm a huge fan. It looks cooler than it feels to hold and fire, if that makes sense. And that ambidextrous switch, especially if you had to have gloves on when you were operating it, I don't know. I question it, but still, once again, just useful to actually get some time shooting one. And then the big guns that I got to fire, which was super fun. Ran a short belt through an M60 E3, which is exactly what you expect it to be. Fantastic to fire. But then the oldies that I really wanted to get a shot with this trip was the DPM, which is a Soviet World War II light machine gun, which has this preposterous like pancake shaped magazine that you just sort of like line up and pop and slam it down with your fist. The DPM itself was actually a bit lighter weight than I expected it to be. Out of all the LMGs that have fired that have been World War II era, it's the lightest weight of them. And actually feels, if we're using the sort of like video game logic of you can just run around in circle strafe firing an LMG, it actually is the one out of the four primary belligerents in World War II that feels most possible with. I hear the magazine is just a nightmare to load, though. And also, be aware, if you're ever firing this from a bipod while standing, like I am here, it ejects its brass down fast, and it's my shoe was beneath it, and my foot hurt afterwards because it got hit by 5 or 6 rounds ejecting. They come out fast, so just be aware of that. And then lastly, I got to fire a Lewis gun, which is just, it's so pretty. I took a whole bunch of footage of it. I just oogled it the whole time. Clearly, as you can see from the size of this thing, and it's like 30 pounds unloaded, you would not be able to just carry one of these around and fire it in real life, despite what Call of Duty says. It's got a similar sort of cylindrical magazine. It's not sealed the way the DPM's is. You can just look at the underside. Apparently also a bit of a pain to load, but higher capacity. It's really, it's delightful firing it because you actually can really see, you can see the cylindrical mag advancing as you fire it, and it always gives me such a smile being able to, it's like a living history museum that explodes, basically. So had a delightful time and learned a lot as always with these trips. It's why I always, when I go shooting, I always try to make sure that I have a little bit of something modern, a little bit of something sort of like mid-century, and then at least 1 or 2 things that are about 100 years old, just because it makes the temporal characteristics of design and handle feel and trigger feel and the sound that mechanisms make, it emphasizes the differences and uniquenesses for me when I'm always having that sort of comparative experience moving between firearms in a single session that are separated by so much time. So, but overall, it was a fantastic trip. As being sick, it was the outdoor shoot was at the beginning when I wasn't sick yet, and then the BF Vegas trip was towards the end when I was quite sick. But I was like, I'm gonna go. Nothing is gonna stand between me and machine guns. So, and nothing did. So I had a fantastic time, and it's got my brain going in terms of all sorts of tuning, rebuilding of this and that I want to do over the next year. And I'll be talking about that after Meatmas. It'll be I'll be doing a big 2018 roadmap video in the next couple weeks talking about that. So cool. Well, as I said before, a couple days left for the Meatmas ornament content. And really importantly, is there going to be an update on Meatmas? You betcha there's going to be a Meatmas Day update. I'm going to be staying up because I'm in California. The universe revolves around me, and so when Meatmas Day is going to be centered on myself, which means that the update is going to go live shortly after midnight PST. So the beginning of the 25th. I have a huge request, especially because those of you who are either staying up late on the West Coast or are getting up around that time in Europe and such. Just if you're making videos or posting about any of the content, please wrap things on spoiler tags. Don't post pictures directly as posts to Reddit, but post a text post and have your image link inside it so it doesn't spoil, the thumbnails don't spoil things for people, especially on mobile. Remember that a whole bunch of the spoiler tag formatting does not work properly on the mobile application or on Reddit is Fun app. So try to keep the spoilers out of the titles entirely. Don't rely on the formatting blacking it out. Have the content, just put spoilers in brackets, have the content inside the post, just so that everyone has an equal chance to wake up on Meatmas Day and be surprised, because it's definitely going to be some freaking surprises. So well, I'm going to head off and probably get back into bed for a bit because I'm exhausted. And I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you all on Meatmas Day. Peace.